please comes.
Yeah, hi, it's the ambulance service. It's Rob. We've got going to a hanging, which is at 114 Flinders Terrace, Port Augusta.
So you guys are on scene already, are you? Or is
we're on our way.
On your way?
Patient was hanging, but has been cut down. Patient's name is Mr. Lester.
Age there?
We haven't got an age.
And who was he found by?
Caller's name was Nolene.
Yeah, just update on what's going on. Gentleman about his 20s, still under CPR at the stage. About 2 crews passing IC on to.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Aaron Lester. I just recently moved down here to Adelaide about a couple of months ago. I'm a uni student now.
I suppose I was his little fan. Well, I was one of his fans too, I suppose. Actually, when I look back at my years, at 19, I don't think I've ever achieved as much as my son achieved at 19. My son was supported all the way through schooling. He had a particular chosen career pathway. He wanted to study music, and that's what he went off to Adelaide University to do. And he was very successful at it. He was very, very well known in the Port Augusta community.
Aaron Lester was a very talented and inspirational young man who lived here in Port Augusta. I had some dealings with him through a youth project called Muso Magic, and he was literally amazing.
Because he was the really loving type of fella. He used to always come up behind me and just kind of go and bite me in my back of my neck, and he was hugging me all the time, and just every member of the family was really affectionate and just liked to hug. Him and my dad used to play fight every day, all the time.
Whenever there was the Fringe Festival, my son would be involved in the performing arts. No, he'd be on stage, and so we'd rush down as a family, to go down and support the festivals in Adelaide, because we knew that, Aaron was going to be on stage.
Your kids are important, they're a part of who you are, and so they personify a bit of you. So when Aaron was doing his music and going down to Adelaide, that was a big thing, We were always in contact with him. He was always in contact with us, Sometimes he'd have no money, or he needed a bit of help here and there, or if I was going down for work stuff, I would ring him up, hey, I'm coming down. Sometimes I'd stay at the hostel with him. They'd allow me to. And it was good, they were nice. I think they liked him. It surprised us, not only myself, because we're sort of people that are a bit out there. And I suppose when you see your kids doing that, it does surprise you, but it makes you happy, He was taking on doing MC. He was trying a bit of comedy.
When little white kids, when they get nervous, their hearts start beating really fast like this. Well, this is how my heart was going when I was walking down the hallway.
You have some great artists and people that are talented, but for some reason they can't cope with the limelight or being in the spotlight, and they've got their own demons or their own struggles to deal with. And like when you're doing MC and you're out there in the front of people, I suppose in some ways you're under the microscope. People are watching you, and So if you do something wrong or maybe say the wrong line or whatever, trying to be a comedian, you know, it doesn't go down too well. You might be a bit hard on yourself.
Didn't see the lead up to it at all. Didn't think he was a comedian, was always, to me, he always looked happy. A lot of people liked him. He never spoke about having any problems that I know of. But I just always saw him as a happy person. He was a joker. I always wanted to joke about something. I just never ever thought him.
He had friends that went to school his age, you know, and they were getting jobs and getting cars and having girlfriends and in relationships where he wasn't doing all of that at the time. He was doing studies. He wasn't earning a lot of money. He had his P's but didn't have a car. You know, he had girlfriends but not a girlfriend. And sometimes I think he was searching like that, and maybe that was something else that he had to deal with as well. I still question or think, you know, what was so hard in his life.
I was driving back from Coober Pedy. I had been in Coober Pedy for work, and I received the call on the radio.
Patient's name is a Mr. Lester.
Age there?
And I must admit the last part of my drive to Port Augusta was a bit of a blur. I could not believe that Aaron had taken his own life.
It was on the 11th day, almost the 11th hour, on Remembrance Day, 2010, when my son took his life. I was at home on my day off work. I was home at the time with my two sons, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter Shalaya, and my daughter Rani. Three times my son was going out to the shed, and 3 times I intervened and asked, you know, come on son, come back to the table and, you know, tell mum how to fix this laptop. He'd got up, he was listening to music, he had a shower, he answered the phone, and he did tell me that it was Grandma Lester ringing, you know, just to let the family know that it's Remembrance Day, remember Grandpa Lester.
And I'd got a telephone from my mother about remembering, because my dad was a soldier, a full-time soldier. The night before, my sons, Leonard and Aaron, and some of our nephews, their cousins, we'd played soccer at Central Oval. We had good fun, you know, a bit of light banter about, you know, how we played and who scored goals and this and that. And
the third and last time that I asked him to look at my laptop and fix it for me, that was basically the last time that I saw my son.
Because I'm very close to all my children, you know. In some ways, I still am. Maybe I baby them, but all my children, my daughters and my sons, were always close to me. Yeah. Nolene, Leonard and Rani were at home. Danica was just down the road. I was at work.
There was a knock on the door. My son's cousin was coming to visit him, and I said, well, you know, go out the back. Aaron's at the back, you know, he's in the shed.
And I asked her where Aaron was, and she saw he might be in his room or out in the shed, so I went, checked the room first. There was nothing in there, so I checked the rest of the house, and I went out to the shed, and that's when I sort of veered down, and you could just see sort of just the image of like him. I just sort of, I stood there, and it was probably about a second or two, but it seemed almost like 5 to 10 minutes or longer. You know, it was just a vivid image that, it's like.
But I'd realised that, you know, time had lapsed, so I got up and went to my room, got myself ready to go to my appointment. And when I'd looked down my hallway opposite, you know, my bedroom, the cousin had come in from the shed and had gone to my other son, young Leonard's room, and, you know, where he and his girlfriend was watching TV. And then they were whispering. I saw them walk across to the kitchen, which is directly opposite, and I could hear the rustling of knives in my drawer, the kitchen drawer. And my ears pricked up, and I was curious now. I was wondering, well, if they're there, where's Aaron?
Went inside and told young Leonard about it. And I whispered it to him so no one else. I didn't really think. I just said, Leonard, I need you to come out here for a sec. And so he sort of got up. That's when he came out, and he was sort of had the same reaction as me, so he's quickly gone and ran in and grabbed a knife.
I was pretty close behind the boys when they went out to the shed, really. And then when I looked directly opposite our back door, all I could see was Leonard Jr. standing there with a knife in his hand, his girlfriend standing alongside him. And they were basically looking into the shed in shock. I didn't know at the time that what had happened, so basically when I went over to join them, I just put two and two together.
I suppose as I was laying there asleep, I was actually awoken by my mum's scream. It was the scream that was just like you knew something was wrong. I thought I was dreaming. Woken me up and I could just hear the pain in mum's voice.
I saw my son being cradled. I asked, his cousin to just bring him towards me and just put him gently down.
I got out the car, I walked straight down to the back shed and I seen my brother laying there. And I could see, must be from the strangulation of whatever he did, must have. Apparently it was car jumper cables that he did it with. And you could see all the bruising or must have been the popped, or something. You could see that he was dead. I looked one look at him and I knew he was dead. And my two children, they were there as well. Can't remember where they were. Everything was like, yeah, one just turning 2. She was walking around. She was actually out there while he was in the air, but I don't think she would have been old enough to know what was going on. Apparently my brother Aaron hugged Shalai out before he went out to the shed for the last time, Mum always tells me. I had to ring Dad, I had to ring my sisters, I had to ring my cousins, just ring the family basically, and can't even remember what I said. It was just yeah, just too, I suppose, couldn't even believe their own words that was coming out of my mouth.
And my daughter rang, Rani, and she said, Dad, Aaron's tried to commit suicide. So the word that really stuck into me was the word try. He hadn't done it, he tried. Without even thinking, I just got up and ran. I didn't even jump in the car, wasn't even thinking, just ran. So I ran from work downtown to Flinders Terrace, but by the time I got there, the police and the ambulance were there. And they were doing, CPR on him or, tried to revive him. But yeah, they were unsuccessful, so.
My younger brother had actually got him down before any of us could see him. So, I really think that saved my mum from a sight that probably would have haunted her for the rest of her years.
Aaron had taken his life. I didn't see him suspended in the air. My young son, Leonard Jr., and his cousin, young Russell Jr., they acted so quickly. I don't know how they did it, and I don't know how they did it with their strength or how they even got their minds around that. I think the young fellas, they just wanted to spare mum, and spare their auntie from finding something that had gone tragically wrong. At the time I was offering my son CPR, I was still processing what to do next. Somebody's got to ring the ambulance, somebody's got to ring the ambulance.
But Aaron was laying on the ground. My brother, Lenny, was next to him. My other cousin was standing up just in shock. My sister-in-law, my younger brother's girlfriend, she was in complete shock. Mum was trying to give CPR. So when I came out the back, I took over from Mum CPR while she went and was talking with the ambulance. And yeah, I knew in myself that, I knew he was gone, and I knew that CPR, what I was doing wasn't going to do anything to bring him back. And at that same time, I think because we were just all in a panic and in shock and crying and screaming, and our neighbours actually heard some of the commotion, a young couple. So they came over and they continued to do CPR until the ambulance got there.
Hello? Okay, is he breathing? No, he's not breathing. Yes, we're coming up their lights and sirens. How old is he? Sorry? He's 13, is he? 19.
There's someone still on CPR. I offered CPR as long as I could.
Yep. Okay.
15, every 15.
Yep, now is he conscious?
Pardon?
Is he conscious at
No,
all?
not at all.
All right, is he breathing at all?
No.
On arrival, we do a primary survey, then assess the patient. On patient examination, occasionally the patient might have evidence that any form of resuscitation will be futile, such as the patient may have rigor mortis. Other times we may get there in the first 10, 20 minutes, we may determine that resuscitation may be appropriate. So during that time, we'll attempt to resuscitate them through CPR, ventilation and drugs. I suppose the nightmare I feel for the relatives, the family members. I cannot imagine what they're going through. I don't think you'd find the words to express what they're going through.
You walk in with a bit of apprehension. Obviously, we've got a job to do as police officers, but on the same token, being a community constable, working in your own community, you are bound to come across your own relatives. And in Aaron's case, his mother and my mother are second cousins. So the connection there was very strong.
Did you attend the site with Aaron?
Yes, I did, yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
It still brings up a lot of emotions. Mm-hmm.
It is one of the biggest issues when we go to particularly a suicide is why are the police here? They're already dealing with their own grief, but we are there on behalf of the coroner and we attend unexpected deaths, and we need to prepare a report for the coroner on the circumstances around what has happened, the manner in the way the person has died, and we need to confirm the identity of the person. So we're there for several different purposes. We attend sudden or unexpected deaths, anything that's violent, unnatural or unexpected, okay? And as I say, there's a lot more in legislation about what we have to attend as well.
Just that one thing.
Yeah, we've called this case, DOA.
What did you say, Bobby?
Yeah, that was, after that there was everything else was just sort of a blur. Everyone come, I just had to sit down. My hands were shaking, just heaps bad. I couldn't really put two and two together. It was just something different, like an experience that you just don't know whether it's true or you're dreaming. You just really want to wake up from it, but then everything's just so, yeah, it's just so hard, and you spend the rest of the day just trying to work out what happened. And
I just remember, just talking to him, letting him know that, he knew that we loved him, I loved him, and that we loved him very much. And, just reminding him, I suppose I was still thinking that he might come back, We were all in the lounge room, in the little area there, and gave us the news, and I suppose once again it was a state of shock. I suppose we didn't think that it was real.
Mum was just hysterical. She was just screaming and crying, and I couldn't get over I couldn't believe what was happening. As soon as we all got there, we just all went into this state of shock, and I can't really remember the whole day properly. I think when you go into shock, you lose a lot of your memory. It's just something that your body puts you through, I think, to deal with it.
Like, sometimes it feels like a blur, but then sometimes you can just remember it so clearly. And I suppose when you print, because I said previously, I already knew that he was gone. And I think I even knew that even with the paramedics, there. I mean, there was that little bit of hope, but I just kind of knew that deep down, I knew that, you know, he really was gone.
When they pronounced him that he was dead, and then they took him, and, you know, and then you go through your grieving, and then you have all the family members coming around, and so I suppose it's a bit surreal, or, you know, you just go numb, yeah.
On the day of my son's funeral, I remember my husband and I standing up and saying something during the service. And the one thing that I remember saying quite clearly is, I wish that today had never happened.
My older brother and youngest brother and sister looked at me and waited for me to kind of say, oh, this one, yeah, this, so yeah. That was a really hard thing to do, to pick a coffin that you're going to lay your brother in. I couldn't. And then, like, we all kind of had a big moment where we just stopped and just cried for a minute or two. And they gave us a time where we could come and have a viewing. And I'm really having a really good look at him, so, you know, how they do the autopsy, and I'm just looking at that, and this is where I thought to myself, wow, my parents grew me up in a Christian home, so I know the difference between hell and heaven, and like I always thought to myself, yeah, I believe in God, I'm gonna do the right thing and go to heaven. But then as I'm sitting there looking at him, just his lifeless body, then I'm wondering if any of that is real. And
to the day of planning the funeral, the day after, and, you know, coming together with the family, and, you know, just meeting crowds and crowds upon people, and, you know, that were offering their condolences.
And then we're sitting there lowering the body, and usually at all the other funerals I've been to, a lot of families, there's a lot of crying, and, you know, all the elders are really crying out loud. But this funeral was like pretty quiet, because me and my whole family sitting there, and we're just like, I didn't cry, and I'm looking at my family and I'm thinking, no one's crying, and this is a really bad thing that's happening, and he's going on the ground and none of us are crying, and I'm just thinking that something must be wrong, you know? Why aren't we showing our emotions for him?
I had my daughter with me. She really, she helped out a lot. Like, she probably didn't know what was going on, but watching her play in the playground and all that there sort of stuff, like, just sort of helped me take my mind off for a bit. It was only until when we, like, chucked the rose petals and that on the coffins when I, like, sort of almost broke down, and then I just walked off with my daughter, and yeah, she really helped me cope with that day. Sometimes, you know, you just sort of close your eyes and you just sort of accidentally reimagine it. You know, it's always going to be there, and it's just something that you have to learn to sort of cope with. Yeah, I'm trying to do that from day-to-day basis, but, you know, it's still sometimes it sort of comes back, but, you know, it's not, you know, it's, you can talk to people, but, you know, it's just your own sort of journey you have to try and cope through.
I notice I don't have as many dreams as I used to have about him, and sometimes I'd wake up just in tears. I would be, you're in your dream, you're crying, but when you wake up, you're crying. So then I just had to cry. It was sad, but, you know, just cry, you know, think about him, talk to him, you know, why did you do this, you know? And I think you just talk it through yourself, and then once you've done all that, you know, and then you can go back to sleep. Yeah, so I don't have those sorts of, those dreams that, you know, really hurtful dreams.
He, you know, he took it really bad with the whole guilt. You know, they, him and Mum, but more so Dad, just had that whole guilt thing of thinking that they did something wrong in raising their child, you know, or not raising him in a certain way, or they didn't do something right, so it was, you know, their fault that he ended up like that. You know, I've had Dad come to me many times crying, and sometimes I feel like the parent and he's the child, because he just can't cope with that heavy grief.
Yeah, I struggled. Yeah. Started drinking. Even took up smoking. I know my children were telling me, you know, they could see, you know, I suppose from how physically it takes hold of you, and then some of the things I was doing, so they tried to, I don't know, scold me or correct me or tell me off, but, you know, because you're older and you're the dad, sometimes I didn't listen.
Our family, because we were so close as well, we talked to each other a lot, you know, very loving and caring towards each other. You know, if we had problems, we'd let each other know about it, or we thought we did, you know. And then, like you're saying, having the previous deaths in the community with young people in suicide, it was, you know, we was always reminding each other, you know, if he's got something you need to talk to someone, you know, talk to one of us, or find someone to talk to, or, you know, don't let it be a burden to you, or don't think that there's nothing that you can't do about it. So it was really, I suppose that was the biggest shock, you know, seeing this bright, young, talented, you know, man just a resort to suicide.
Yeah, I was really, really struggling at that time, and it's just good being around Aaron, and, you know, like, was just like laughing, like just being with family and that. And I was talking to him about all my issues and that, and at the end of the day, I didn't even realise he had any. I should have, didn't really ask him, as I thought he wouldn't have had nothing. But then, you know, it's a hard subject with like Indigenous men, because it's just pride. Like, everything's pride. Like, with men, we don't really want to talk about that stuff. We just shut it out, or we just avoid the conversation.
Dad's kind of got that clingy thing on us kids. Like, he thinks, you know, because we've lost one, we could lose another. So that's always in his mind now, that, you know, you can't, you know, do I tighten the reins, or do I let these loose, or you know, he's like conflicted in how we should, you know, act with us.
What impacted on my family that day, I don't think any one of us could actually speak to each other, let alone look at each other.
Noeline, my wife, beats herself up. I remember for a while she beat herself up because she was there at the house, and a couple of times she'd ask him about a couple of things on the computer, and he'd come back in, but he was always wanting to go out to the shed, you know, but she'd call him back in, and he'd look, and he'd press a button here and do this, and then he would go off. But then he went out to the shed, and, you know, she thought she heard a noise out there, but didn't think much of it because he was doing something. But it might have been him struggling and kicking, I don't know.
You know, do I blame my husband? Does he blame me? Do my children blame me? Because, you know, I was the parent home at the time. I should have been the responsible parent home at the time to do something to prevent this from happening.
If I went around a bit earlier and maybe picked him up for lunch, you know, like, would it have been different, or, you know, like, would he still, you know, it's just, you just end up with all these questions, and you just don't know what's the right answer. Or
I thought about, you know, why was I too hard on him? You know, did I do things, you know, was he sick of this family? You know, did he hate us? Yeah, I did beat myself up a bit, I think.
I think we keep our thoughts and our feelings to ourselves a lot as a family. We haven't really actually probably debriefed as well as we probably should have.
Yeah, and I found like with Mum, it affected her in a way that Mum's not the confrontational type. Yeah, notice that she distanced herself or cut herself off a little bit. Yeah, I suppose that's her way of dealing with it, is taking herself out of the picture, so she has that self-healing, which is okay, you know, on an individual level, but as a family, it really, I suppose, hurts not to be able to sort through the emotions and the grief together.
See, when that happened, Mum and Dad kind of just focused on the one that was gone and kind of forgot about the ones that were still there, and that kind of, we couldn't say it to them because it was a very sensitive issue, and we kind of had to be there for them too, but they had to be there for us. But because that happened, that was really hard to do.
I suppose the death of Aaron really took its toll on Mum and Dad's relationship as well. They're just, I suppose, just that grief and not being able to, I suppose, really talk about it. Like sometimes we do try and talk about it, but I suppose sometimes not in a healthy way.
With all of us, you know, we were shattered, and so you do grieve. And I think when I was struggling, and my kids could see that I was hurting them and they were hurting. So when they were hurting, you know, they would lash out at me, you know, Dad, you know, wake up to yourself, or, you know, do this or don't do that, or why are you doing this? Why are you sort of drinking again for, you know?
You know, when you just try and talk about the issue, it just always ends up being an argument, or the situation just becomes really like walking on eggshells. No one, yeah, you want to be able to talk about it and I suppose remember him in a positive way. But maybe, you know, like we haven't really all dealt with our grief properly, so it just ends up kind of blowing up into a family argument, or people getting on each other's nerves, or...
Yeah, it's just, it's an impossible sort of thing to sort of overcome. You know, I'm still sort of like struggling to cope with it now, and like, you know, it's just something I hardly ever talk about, and like it's just sort of yeah, how it is.
See, I don't understand where they're coming from, but then I don't want to put myself in their shoes with my children, but then I kind of think, well, if that happened to me, I'd lose it. And when I see my mum and dad, how they've dealt with it, they've done a good job.
The loss of your son impacts greatly on a relationship. And sometimes you don't know how to fix it, and sometimes you just have to leave it alone.
Gee, I think we all have our dark sides, all of us. We have moments of self-doubt as human beings. And that's the pressure of the world and things like that. You know, even having girlfriends. See, I think what one of his struggles too was he didn't have a girlfriend, because I know the night before he was Facebooking and he was talking to someone, and I don't ever think I'm blaming this person, you know, but he had a conversation with this girl and she was seeing someone else, and he got a bit angry, and she didn't realise that he'd liked her or was thinking of her in that way, and he got a bit, you know, as I said, a bit angry and narky. I was a bit disappointed, actually, when my daughters were actually able to retrieve or find out what he was doing the night before. And I think that might have had a bit of influence on him too, and that can be negative because, you know, everyone wants to be loved and belong to, you know. And I know, I'm sure that he knew that he was loved by us, that's for sure. But maybe he didn't have that from girls and the opposite sex.
Social media today has a big effect on especially those who use it. We have a lot of problems with that. as far as dealing with the fallout from, especially with young people today, the fallout from social media and what they put on social media. He said, she said.
We live in a different time zone, I think we can say. It's different, and there's a lot more now. The world has gotten smaller, and with the internet and the computer age, you can be up all hours of the night doing things, but you don't give your mind a rest. And all of us, our body needs rest. Everyone needs to rest. I could see he wasn't getting that rest, so I would scold him sometimes. I'd get up in the middle of the night, go to the toilet, and I'd see the light on, and so I'd pop my head in. He was still up, with headphones on, either Facebooking or doing music or doing something, and I'd be telling him, "You got to have a sleep. You got to go to sleep. You got to have rest."
He didn't seem the type of lad to do that to himself. He was perfectly sane, and that's the doctor's exact words. He was perfectly sane. And then, of course, that left a whole lot of questions why.
Because everyone's seen the Lester family like a real, Christian, happy family. We was just kind of sort of almost like a perfect family. And then that happened, and that really broke us.
I think we're only starting to understand mental health issues now.
We've talked about a few issues when, the night before, but it was nothing as big as what could have caused, the incident to, for him to do something like that to himself. So there was something else that he was trying to bottle up, and yeah, we'll never know.
When something like that happens, see, before you hear about it, you're just going everyday life, everything's okay. Then you get the news, so you're on the edge, a bit of adrenaline. Then it's been confirmed, and then you're in a state of shock, and then you're in all that misery and emotion afterwards, and then it's the road to recovery after that, and that takes a long time.
Sometimes I don't like what my kids have to tell me, but I think as a parent, if you want to be honest and true, you've got to listen to your children, because they're your barometer, or they keep you in check, because they see things that other people don't, Yeah.
And I think the biggest hurdle for me as a parent, and certainly for my husband as a parent, was actually finding a way to communicate with each other again. Because we had to find our way back to each other, because we'd lost ourselves in all that.
We have had one family meeting where we met with the counselling mob and stuff like that. And that was good, but I still think we was, I'm not saying la la land, but we were somewhere else, we were still struggling. Because he had left a big gap in our family. I think grieving is important, when something like this happens. You got to not bottle things up. One of my friends, a fellow colleague, but a relative, Aaron Stewart, he, when it happened, we went off one day. We went for a bit of a drive, but he got me to see that, our son was a gift to us for 20-something years, or 19 years, but, he was a gift for us, and so treasure those moments.
When I'm telling my story to someone, I blurt out, the silly little bugger took his life. I remember coming from Corn, and that's where our son's resting, doing that drive back just the day before the funeral. And I put one of my son's CDs on, because he was involved in quite a lot of workshops, and he was beatboxing something out, And I just remember screaming at the top of my voice, you know, and swearing and cursing and basically getting angry with myself, getting angry with him, getting angry with the world. I get angry with myself sometimes because I'm angry at my son, you know, for doing that to himself.
Women, boys, you know, young teenagers, men and women, and they think this is the only answer, and so they do what they do, and so it's sad that they do it. Witness and experience a lot of deaths, especially within the Aboriginal community. When it hits home, it helps you fully understand, and I still struggle with death in the community. But I think it makes you just a bit more understanding, you know, what people are going through.
If my son was here right now, I'd probably give him a shaking up.
I was going to say, you'd be furious.
I'd probably give him a good telling off. And then I'd probably give him a hug.
I think there's a lot of pressure on our young people with the world today, and the world's gotten smaller. So we see the news and everything that's faster in the world, and, you know, when there's a downturn here or, you know, economic woes and this and that, you know, you think about the future. I think for our young Aboriginal people, there's a lot of pressures, but also there's a lot of opportunities as well. But still, there's a lot of pressure to conform, I suppose, to Western way, Western culture. And some of our people still have that traditional values, or their culture's very strong with them. I know for our children, you know, my wife's, her mob, her ways are still strong. But me being a non-Aboriginal person, you know, you live that white life as well, or the Western culture. For our young people, it's very hard sometimes to walk the two worlds. And I don't think some people understand that sometimes.
The reason why suicide is so high in the Aboriginal community, I think it's just this expectations of how we should actually live as Aboriginal people, you know?
As far as education's concerned, they have to be in school a lot longer than what we did to achieve a reasonable job or a reasonable standard to get a job. And there's a lot less jobs out there today than there was back when we were kids. And there's a lot more responsibility on them at a younger age.
Expectations are very high. Living away from country, in the big city, living away from all your support networks, you know, your family, your friends. 3 or 4 first cousins in my family that have all lost a young person through suicide. You know, so you'd think that we would know by now how to read those signs.
You know, it made me think, well, what am I going to do? You know, how can I make a difference to young people's lives? Or how can I, you know, help them see that, you know, suicide shouldn't be your only option. So that's when I started working at the youth centre and I suppose building relationships within the community with young people, and just found that, you know, passion, I suppose that's helped me find my passion for working with young people.
I just always think back at it and just try and make myself just seem happier for those couple of minutes or whatever I might feel a little down.
For whatever reason, you know, my son did what he did, you know, I'm not angry at him. You know, I get a bit annoyed, I suppose, or hurt, but I try and understand what he was thinking, you know, and I think I do understand, because a part of him is like me, so I think I can understand.
Over time, it will get better because, like I said, it's not gonna go. The pain never goes away. The time just makes it easy for you to deal with.
He made a mistake that it was irreversible. We all make mistakes. Sometimes you can learn from them, and sometimes they're mistakes that you just can't undo.
When I talk about this in forums, or when I talk about this to other parents, it just helps me to not only offload, it means that I don't bottle all the information up. And I hope that someone else's mother doesn't have to go through what I went through that day.
And we may have our struggles, but I think we can't use it as an excuse to be in the state that we're in. You know, if you want to be still drinking and doing this, you know, we've got to really realise we've got our other kids.
If there was something that I could say to the youth of today, it probably would be, don't keep, you know, all your hurts inside. Talk to someone, because your parents can't read your mind. Your brothers and sisters can't read your mind. If something isn't going right inside of you, tell someone.
A friend of mine, an older friend of mine, who's 10, 15 years older than me, told me once, you can always see someone who's been injured, like if they've got a broken arm or a broken leg, but you can never see a broken mind.
You know, even if you've got to write it down just to get it out there, or, you know, do something to get the bad feelings out. You know, don't keep them bottled up inside, because they'll just, you know, sit in there, fester until that day comes when, you know, you feel your only option is suicide, when it's not. You know, there's thousands, millions, trillions of people in the world. You know, I'm sure one person out there can help you.
Let's get it out there. You know, the stigma, the old stigma needs to go, and we need to start talking about these things. And I suppose that would be my biggest, my message that I would love to get out to people is don't be afraid to talk about it. You know, what's going on, how you're feeling, and ask the big question, have you considered taking your own life?
I've been through a bit of depression. I'm not saying that I was suicidal, but the help that I got over the 3 years that I had depression was a great help for me and the people that were around me, and I asked for help.
If you're thinking about doing anything like this to yourself, just look at what's going on here with this story and how much it's affected us, and just the whole entire world that evolved around him is just devastated, and it's not easy for people.
You know, suicide is often associated with mental health, and everyone has mental health. You know, it's how you care for your mind. You know, it's how you feed and look after your mind. It's just like looking after any part of your body. You know, if you take care of it, you know, give it the good stuff, then hopefully suicide won't be an option.
I try and mark his birthday by doing something significant. Whenever there's a 21st in the town and, you know, they're celebrating, you know, young people are celebrating their 21st, you can't help but feel affected by it. And it's kind of like a trigger, you know, and so you have to kind of bring yourself through, you know, through that process again.
You know, I think about it now, and I think, you know, how hard it must have been for Mum and Dad to see that, you know, their son. Well, like, we all feel the pain from it, but it'll be a different pain for them because that's their son.
Aaron, I love you, and I don't know why you did it, but I reckon if he knew what we were feeling, he wouldn't have done it.
I'd probably give him a good telling off. And then I'd probably give him a hug.
I'll have a bit of a chat with Noel and say, you know, gee, I miss him, you know.
Thank you, Zoe. My name is Aaron Lester. Catch you later.
You only got one shot, one life. You only got one shot, one life. You only got one shot, one life to do what you can to serve.